going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are here for the first of what will be many Strixhaven MTG story reviews. So, as was surmised in last week's video, if you missed it, we are taking a break from Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch re-reviews, or reviews, if you will. We'll
callback reviews.
Yeah, but we'll be back to those when we are done with these. But this is the newest thing, and so this is what we are working on now. It's going to be a little different, just to give you an idea of how these are going to work. It's similar to what we did with the last set, but not exactly, with Kaldheim. But what we're going to do is this week we are reviewing just, as you may have seen with the thumbnail, just stories 1 and 2 of the main stories. We will be reviewing the side stories, and this has nothing to do with commentary on the side stories being anything different from the main or better or worse, etc. We're doing 2 stories, and so instead of doing 1 and 1, we decided to do 2, and then next week we can do 2 side stories. Mm-hmm. The week after, we can do 2 main stories. The week after that, 2 more side stories. So we're going to be doing our best to try to keep it consistent in terms of main story, side story, and then if there are 5th chapters of each, that last video will be us reviewing the last of each of them. That's just how that goes, and that's totally fine.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that way it makes it a little bit easier to kind of, to have the videos be, like, make a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Because we're sticking with the same story arc.
Yeah. And it
in the same video.
Right, and I think it pays dividends even in this video alone, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So, by the way, if you're curious, today the stories that we are reviewing are, as I said, the main stories for Strixhaven, episodes 1 and 2, which are Class is in Session and Lessons, both stories by Adana Washington. My quick review at the top is, I think that Lessons was very good, and I encourage people to read it. I enjoyed it. And I think Classes in Session, while I assume it will not be super memorable going forward, it is the setup story. And so for it to be the setup story going forward, you should read it to get yourself ready to go. And that's not to say anything about the writing style. I think the writing is fine. I just think the content was more of a setup, so it wasn't very exciting, it was just kind of informational.
Yeah, it was boring. I didn't like it. But, speed read it.
Sure, sure. It gives you...
take your time when you're reading this one.
The second one was very good. Lessons we enjoyed a lot.
Yeah.
It kind of got right into things, which was nice. And again, that's why I say it benefited from the setup from episode 1. So so there was that. So to talk about, we'll go into the main story itself. The reason that we give that quick review in the beginning, though, for all of you, is so that you hear our opinions on it, but so that you can go read it for yourself if you have not already, and to remove all barriers that could possibly be there. Check the links in the description down below. The top 2 links should be to these 2 stories labeled as such. So if you do want to go read those stories, please feel free. Click the links down below so that you can read them for yourself. And then, of course, we would love it if you would come back here and join us, because here on JaAR, as we always say, we review, we don't summarize. So, and we would love it if you would join in the conversation in the comments down below. Yes. That is what it is for.
We love to hear what you've got to say.
Exactly. So, I really appreciated, just to get into the full review itself. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I'm not talking over you. God knows I do that enough.
I do that to you, too.
We're co-hosts, it just kind of happens. Like, it's not on purpose, it's not malicious. But I liked we're going to start with story 1, just to, keep it as consistent as we can. For Classes in Session, I liked how it started with a description. Liliana is in the biblioplex, she's walking through the stacks, and she mentions how the books seem to wrap the place in a kind of hush. There are so many books around, and it seems to wrap the place in a kind of hush. And whether you have been fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you want to look at it, to not be able to be in a college library or a big old library full of books, like I said, fortunate or unfortunate for you, I can definitely say that much of a collection of old books. Like, first of all, you can smell that building when that description is there, if you've been in one of those yourself. But also, that it's true. All those old books and pages and tomes, they kind of absorb the sound around it. There's like a hush through the entire building. And I was saying to Amy, that is, in my estimation, there's a combination, right? There's a respect in libraries, or a stereotype in libraries, of it needing to be quiet. But there are still people in libraries who have conversations. But they're typically hushed conversations. But I still feel like there is that element of the books kind of absorbing some of that sound to prevent it from traveling further than it could. And so I really appreciated that aspect of flavor just right in the beginning of the story, where it's like, oh my god, yeah, okay, yep, I hear that. I appreciate it.
Hear it.
Yeah, or don't hear it. But then we start in, very interestingly, right, we have that moment of calm and serene, and then we're with Liliana, by the way, Professor Onyx, who is Liliana. It's a whole thing. She's not Ariana Iora, or whatever she named herself. Anna Iora, that was what it was. Because Liliana, Anna Iora. We don't hear that name at all, which I've seen conflicting commentary on it as to whether that means they're moving away from that entirely because it was a Forsaken thing, and they want to go in a different direction, or if that just, it's said in the story that, nobody noticed that it was Liliana that showed up using a different name. So maybe she did use Anna Iora and they're just not comfortable using that name. Who knows? I guess we'll see going forward. Maybe we consider it a retcon, maybe we don't.
Well, what plane was she on?
What do you mean? When she did the Anna Iora thing?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
So maybe she just...
if they mentioned...
planes walked to a different plane to go to where Strixhaven was.
Sure.
And so, because she was on a different plane going to where Strixhaven was and wanted to pretend to be a teacher for some stupid reason, she changed her name again.
Who knows? I mean, there's no way to know. Until they tell us more, hopefully soon, if that's something that they care to talk about, unless that was their way of being like, whatever, that was her name, now she's Professor Onyx, let's move along, And that's probably fine too. I'm not going to sit there and be like, what happened to Anna Iora? I loved it. It's fine.
Yeah. I kind of don't care.
Yeah, welcome to JaAR. Amy loves Liliana, so buckle up. And you have every right to not, by the way. I'm not saying anything that's wrong in any way. But it starts right in with Liliana meeting an Auric, which are seemingly the bad guy group in this set of stories. And so it starts right off. There's no tiptoeing around it. It is right in your face, right in the beginning. Shoots magic at her. It hits her in the arm or grazes her arm. She's like scared for a moment of like, oh my god, I almost just died. And then, then Liliana comes out, and so she tries to kill him in response and gets stopped by a teacher or a dean coming up behind her. In fact, Dean Talonrook coming up behind her. And we get a little bit of, world building with Dean Talonrook talking about Dean Nassari and Mage Tower, which is either the Quidditch variant or something similar, where it's like the sport on campus or something like that.
Did Professor Talonrook, move forward and then move forward again and then move to the side just once?
That is a knight, not a rook, but...
I thought the knights were diagonal.
That's bishops.
Oh. So what does a rook do?
Forward and back or side to side.
Oh, well, that's more boring.
Now we're talking about wizard's chess. Or just chess. Anyway, I guess because I mentioned Quidditch, we can talk about this. We meet the Kenrith twins, because they are in these stories, and they have an invitation to Strixhaven. the invitation is owl-shaped, and fireworks shoot out of it when they pick it up, when Rowan picks it up. I think that, and I have no inside information, as I tend to say, I think that Wizards was very lucky. Because as we know, these sets get worked on way in advance, right? 3 years or whatever the magic number is, where they know, hey, this set that we're doing in 3 years is going to be a magic school, right? A school of magic. And for better or worse these days, the thing that sticks in most people's minds when you say a magic school is Hogwarts and Harry Potter. It just is. It's the most popular form of that in the last ever, in modern times. But with some issues that have come to light recently, with J.K. Rowling and some of the other cast members, with other cast members speaking out against that, it's a whole thing. I'm not necessarily looking to get into it here, but if it's something that you are comfortable looking up, if you're unfamiliar with it, please do so, but realize that there's some very unpleasant things that are discussed there, so be aware of yourself and where you're at before you look any of that stuff up, because it's not necessarily the safest place for somebody. So just, like I said, connect with yourself before you might do that. Otherwise, just stay away from it and just realize that it's not great. I would not have been surprised if, and there's a lot going on in this set with like Mystical Archive cards, which seem amazing, by the way, etc. But I wouldn't have been surprised, I was saying this to Amy earlier as well, if this set was going to try to do what Ikoria did with Godzilla cards with Harry Potter stuff. And if they did that, and then the J.K. Rowling stuff happened, I think that it would have been a lot worse for the game, because we never would have come back to Strixhaven again. But now we're having to deal with the fact that Wizards shouldn't want to reference Harry Potter. And no matter what inspiration they may have taken from it, or no matter what you can't get away with because it was already done by this prominent franchise in Harry Potter, and you may not want to reference it, but you're going to do it by default because that's the piece that everybody recognizes. The owl letter is the thing that stood out to me as, oh god, that's kind of close. Because the Hogwarts letters are delivered by owl. I don't know that I could say, I mean, maybe you can tell me, I don't know that I could say that I saw a lot of other comparisons. Like I said, maybe Mage's Tower is the Quidditch variant or something, but I'm sure there are a lot of parallels that will be drawn over time and with the world building and stuff, but I didn't see a ton in these.
I'm not looking forward to it.
No.
To be honest.
No, and that's fair. But I didn't see a ton in these two stories besides those two things, but I was a little worried when that owl letter came up so quickly. And I think we all just have to kind of understand, listen, it's just gonna stick in our heads. If that's the closest we come, I think I'm okay. Because it touches on it and then runs away kind of a thing. I think if there are more things that get closer, it could get a little uncomfortable.
I just think, having that in there was fucking useless. There was no reason for it other than to be we're not doing Harry Potter. I promise. It was really stupid. But, I mean, you're right, I guess. I was expecting it to be a lot worse. I was expecting, going into this, I was like, oh, great. A main story. That means I'm going to have to listen to them talk about Liliana incessantly, who I hate. And then also make too many fucking parallels to Harry Potter, which just come up with your own shit. And having read it already, it wasn't that bad.
No, like I said, if that's the closest we get, I think I'm good. And to be honest, I'd like to think that because there's been a fair amount of time between when things started becoming problematic till now, that at least if there needed to even be rewrites, right? If there were things that were already written, if there needed to be rewrites, that it would have been easy enough to go in and do that. But I'd like to think that with the span of time that there was between then and now, that there didn't need to be rewrites, and they just tried as best as they could to stay away from it. And that, if anything, in the cards we might see more problematic stuff than in the stories, because the cards are things that have to be coordinated so much further in advance than a story, which can have rewrite after rewrite after rewrite, where arguably, right, the fifth story, or the fourth story, or the third story could still be in rewrites as we're making this video, because you don't need to keep it like lockstep consistent, and even if you do, there are still little details here and there that you can tweak in your writing before you send it to print, so to speak, for it to go live. So yeah, if it comes up again, we will mention it, but for now, I think it's good. If you have different opinions and you feel like it was too close or it was nowhere near, as always, we would love to hear from you. Always. We hear about Kasmina and Garruk in relation to the twins. Garruk is mentioned and then gone, just based on how the end of the Throne of Eldraine story, the Wilder Quest, worked out. Kasmina, though, and maybe I'm forgetting something, but the twins mention Kasmina and knowing Kasmina as if that's something that we have known for a while. But,
right.
But the first time we ever saw Kasmina, we as players and readers, I guess, ever saw Kasmina was War of the Spark. And she did not have a big part in War of the Spark.
No.
She was mysterious in that way of like, who is this character? Where did she come from? What's going on? And now she's here, right? This is the next time that we're seeing her. And now the twins, whom we've only seen on Battle Bond and Throne of Eldraine, are now here. So there's no commingling there. The twins weren't on Ravnica for War of the Spark, right? They weren't one of the ones that showed up there. And Kasmina wasn't in Throne of Eldraine, at least in card form. So I'm curious if that's just something where they're like, by the way, trust us, we met her, we talked to her, no big deal, or if it's something that I'm like completely forgetting. So if you know, as always, let us know.
So maybe just the way they worded it was kind of weird, or maybe they just wanted to make it seem like it's something that everybody's aware of except the audience.
Maybe.
You know?
Maybe, yeah.
Like, we'll explain this later.
Yeah. You wanted to talk a bit, or we talked a bit about that one line of teasing Kasmina's home plane.
Oh, yeah.
Where Will, like, asked her where she was from, or whatever.
What plane are you from? Oh, you will not tell me? I guess we'll find out next set.
Or some other set. But to me, I wasn't as upset with it as you were, right?
Shoehorn, and I hate it.
Yeah, I wasn't as upset with it, but I thought it was, like, they touched on it, it's gone, and they never mentioned, I doubt they will mention it again in this set of stories. And
I'm sorry, but that's not, like, touching on something that they shouldn't be touching on is a waste of my time as a reader. And if you want to actually get into it, then fine. Actually get into it. And then maybe I'll care. But if you're just going to touch on something for the fucks I might give later, no. Because guess what? Then I'm going to not give any fucks.
See, and I looked at it, like I said, I looked at it slightly differently, right? So I looked at it as a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference of like, do we know Kasmina's home plane? Nope. This is the second time we're ever seeing her. Are we going to get that information? Nope. And it allows the company and or the writers to basically say, hey, look, either we know where she's from and you're not going to find out until way later, or we don't know where she's from. We haven't figured it out yet. We've made her as a character, whatever, but we don't know where she's from. And so we're not going to say because we don't know yet. And when we find a plane that we've made that she is from, or we find a plane that already exists that she could be from, then we will, the next time, one of the next times that we go back there, we will make sure that she is there and we can find that information out. I thought it was like a fine way of them not talking about it while still talking about it, but I guess your point is well made in that then don't talk about it. Don't even bring it up, because then it's like, oh, are we going to find out where she's from? No, you know?
Yeah, it's like when a little kid comes up to you and says, I know a secret. And you're like, okay, what's the secret? And then they won't tell you and they just run away. It's really stupid. And you as an adult are like, okay, well, that was a waste of my time. But I also really don't care what the secret is at that point.
Okay.
You know, like I
Sure.
just don't.
I will reference the second story while talking about the first story for a moment, in that when Will and Rowan show up on campus and they notice the differently garbed students walking around, and they talk about the fact that the students in different garb tend to be in their own groups. So the Prismari students are over here, the Witherbloom are over here, Quandrix are over there, and they're all kind of together. And Amy and I were talking about it a bit and saying, like, you know, there are kind of two ways that I looked at that. Either it was like, hey, listen, fraternizing between the schools, not really okay. Not really looked upon favorably, right? You're a weirdo if you go talk to the Prismari kids if you're in Silver Quill or whatever, right? Or vice versa. And that would be shitty. I'm with you on, right?
Segregation.
Well, sure.
Like weird shitties.
Yeah, but, or it could be the more practical aspect, which is just like, I'm in class with you all day. I'm not in class with those people, right? When we go back to our dorms, I'm in dorms with you all day. So I'm not about to, like, I don't have time to go out and meet kids from Silver Quill if I'm in Prismari.
Right, there's just no proximity or whatever.
And yet, right. And so that's what I thought of, right? It was those two options, and the second one seemed more plausible. But in the second story, it was slightly cleared up for me in what would otherwise kind of be like a throwaway thing, but not really. Because, I guess spoilers, Rowan chooses Prismari as her school. And we find out at the end of the second story, or towards the end of the second story, that Liliana sees Rowan walking by in her Prismari outfit, talking to her Witherbloom friends. Okay, done. It just happened to be that they were walking in those groups, but it's totally acceptable now. Again, there's a very slim chance, and I highly doubt this is the case, but there's a very slim chance that because Rowan ain't from here, it's possible that she just doesn't understand how things work, and she's talking to Witherbloom when she's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I don't buy that. I don't think that's what's going on, but it is technically a possibility.
Well, I don't buy that the rest of the kids who go here are from here. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and that would answer how the two of them, the twins, were able to have an invitation that still, whose magic still works on Kylem,
right,
where they are, even though it's a different plane. How did they get that? Did they planeswalk to Arcavios to get the letter? Or did Kasmina, like, bring it to them or something? It's very odd. But I don't know. I really don't. And then we have... I mean, I have a slight prediction. We know that Rowan is in Prismari. We know that Prismari is red, blue. Rowan is red, Will is blue. They tease a bit of a rift between the twins at one point.
There's
Where
a rift between the twins, and so are you.
And Rowan has picked Prismari, but Will doesn't have to be in Prismari, right? Where Will's like, we could go to this biblioplex and like look up all this stuff, and Rowan's like, that's nice, and just leaves. She's like, have fun with that.
Do it now,
Yeah,
because that's not what I'm about.
yeah. And she says the classic line of, we may be twins, but I can live my own life. It's like, you know, we've seen that many times.
Even though they can't planeswalk by themselves, apparently.
Yep. She planeswalks away, and Will's like, damn it, I gotta go. All right, I'll take this, you know. I can see Will, and maybe I'm projecting, but I could see Will in Quandrix. You know, he almost, with his like interest in research and etc., he sounds like he could be a lore hold as well, but that's not part blue. So to metagame it a little bit, since he's a blue walker, I would say that, you know.
Well, unless he like, I don't know. What's lore hold is what, white, red?
Correct. Yeah. So, you know, maybe he takes some of the red from his sister, but I don't know.
I think so.
I could see him as more Quandrix myself, just based on like, look. He is spurred on to fight with Rowan only when his book gets covered in ink. Right?
Yeah.
That's just like, whereas Rowan is just like, cool, a fight, you know, and just like shooting stuff or whatever. And then Will's book gets ruined, and then he's like, all right, let's do this, you know, and like gets ready. That's like,
Fuck all y'all.
I'm here for that. Like I said, projecting, right? I'm definitely a Quandrix based on what we've seen. But I could understand that. Be like, I spent so goddamn long deciding on which book I was going to bring with me, and I finally decided on this one, and then you dumb idiots have to go and have your stupid fight and ruin my amazing book that I love.
Right.
So yeah, no, now I'm taking you down. I get that. I definitely get that. Please feel free to cue the, you know, Homer Simpson nerd. Totally fair. Whether you're talking about Will or me, don't care. At all. They also talk about teasing something being wrong with the twins' magic here. Who knows what that is, whether that's that, you know, they need stronger magic because they're on a plane that's so prevalent with it. Or the school maybe dampens magical abilities around it or something, you know? Or maybe it's whatever the Auric are doing is draining some magical energy from the area. Who knows? Like I said, Liliana sees the twins. We find out that it says Liliana...
Maybe there's just like such a concentration of people using mana in that area that it makes it difficult or it makes it like harder to actually get it. Like,
Sure.
Like internet.
Sure. Bandwidth and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. There's it's a high traffic mana day today here in Strixhaven.
Or shut off your AC units because, you know, otherwise
there's not enough energy to go
grid will
around.
shut
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, absolutely. We find out a little bit of a secret, but we find out Liliana, the quote is Liliana can, quote, almost feel the weight of her old Witherbloom uniform. Which means she didn't show up on this plane and start being a student, right? She was a student previously. She's been here before. Now she's a professor, and as we'll see in the next story, gets to go and talk with one of the founding Elder Dragons, which is awesome. But very interesting that she used to go here and was a Witherbloom, which, as you correctly pointed out, it makes sense that she was a Witherbloom, but...
Annoying, though.
Yes.
Because I like Witherbloom. You know, and... it's like a Mr. Peebly thing, or whatever.
I have no idea what you just said. What?
You know, School of Rock.
Oh, Schneebly.
Schneebly.
Schneebly is his name.
Yeah. Just like,
It's like, what is
show up
Peebly?
and like no one does a background check. You give like the stupidest fucking name ever and you're just like, yeah, I'm a teacher. You just pull a guitar out your ass and you're like, I'm gonna teach these kids. Like, no.
Yeah. And so then we get a quick bit at the end to just to finish.
How being a teacher works.
Just to finish off the first story, we get a quick bit of Luca, and Kazmina is keeping an eye on the twins with one of her owls, and then gets pulled into the sight of one of her other owls who is watching over the desert, or flying over the desert. And in doing so, she sees Luca walking and sees Luca get picked up by the Arik and brought into a cave. Now, we're not told what Kazmina's reaction to this is. Some of the descriptions that were given may lead you in one direction, but let me throw a theory out there, if I can. Get a little, again, Quandrixy tinfoil hat. I think Kazmina knows about the Arik and or is working with and helping them. That moment
for her.
Well, sure. That moment where her owl is looking down and sees that, why was her owl there? Did her owl know that something was going down in that area? I think she might have.
It seems like it.
It does. My suspicion is that we will find out that Kazmina is in some way affiliated with the Arik, whether their leader, working with them, controlled by them, whatever it happens to be. My suspicion is we will find out by the end of this that she is working with them. She is not on the up and up. Just throwing that out there.
You're not on the up and up.
That sounds right. Then we start with story number 2, lessons, unless you had more to talk about for story 1.
No, pretty much not.
Okay.
Kind of didn't like it, you know.
I want to talk about, we talked about something good at the top end of story 1, classes in session. Let's talk about something good at the top of story 2. Short, like 3 paragraphs, but like the second and third paragraph were like 2 and 1 line each. But whatever, a section, a small section in the beginning, talks about Taver, who is one of the Arik. And then we find out that not only is he one of the Arik, he is the Arik that attacked Liliana in the stacks, in the library, in the first story. And in that short section, we find out that he is the Arik that attacked Liliana. We find out that the leader of the Arik, or at least the leader of that area of the Arik, is named Extus, who we then see later on in the story, but we didn't know who that guy was when he confronted Luca at the end of the first story. We now very quickly find out his name at the beginning of the second one, which is good, because there are only 5 stories, right? So too many hanging threads of like, it's a mystery, what is this? Like, ending one story that way on a cliffhanger, cool, makes sense. Going into your next story and answering it so quickly is a great way of being like, by the way, this is how we're handling mysteries. Awesome. You're not letting us sit for 3 weeks where we're like, oh, right, that guy from the first story, I remember him. No.
You're not giving us enough time to stop caring.
Yeah, you go right into mystery at the end of the first one, start of the second one, here he is, here's his name. Really cool. Appreciated that.
Yes.
But you also find out about Taver, right? He says, they talk about the Ariks in general, or he talks about the Ariks in general, that they have the philosophy of the students of Prismari are undeserving brats, right? That's how they look at them. So that's cool that we know a bit of their motivations in terms of what their feelings are towards Strixhaven, and that they're doing this, what we find out is forbidden magic, right? Or at least forbidden by Strixhaven. But we also find out, Taver is not like, he's doing bad deeds, but I wouldn't say that he's like blindly evil, right? He literally says like, look, I just got attacked by this woman, or I attacked this woman, but she tried to kill me. She wanted to murder me. And that's not worth getting a book for Extus.
Right.
It ain't worth it. My life is more important to me than that. Right? if he was a mindless minion, right, for an evil organization or whatever, it would be like, well, whatever, I'm happy to give my life for the cause. No, this dude's like, no, hell no, I don't want this. Absolutely not. So, like, I really appreciated this small section of Taver. And even later on, I wrote more about him later because, here we go, when Luca sees the Auric fighting the Dragon's Guard and makes the comment to himself or whatever that they're like super undisciplined. They had no plan, they had no strategy against this Dragon's Guard.
Right.
They just like showed up and they, what was the quote? Just a bunch of scary costumes.
Right. And they just didn't care. Like, they just basically thought, like, we'll be intimidating enough for this person to, like...
be off their guard and be hit by our spells or whatever. And instead she was like, nope, counter that, throw this away, I don't care about you, right? Like,
fuck all of you.
Right, like, but she was able to deal with 4 Auric and most of the beasts that Luca threw at her, right? So, it, you know, except for the one. But she was a little distracted by Luca at that point, so. But that goes back to Taver, right? These guys are just guys. They're just people who, like, are these somewhat skilled mages, but they're not super skilled. They're not Dragon's Guard skilled, and yet they're going up against Dragon's Guard. And we find out, you know, Extus isn't a fan of Dragon's Guard because they're much better than his minions are. So, so we learned a lot about these villains, which is always nice. Nameless, faceless villains are fine, but if we've learned anything from the Marvel Universe, people really appreciated Thanos a lot more than the Mandarin or Whiplash or whatever, right, from the Iron Man movies, because Thanos got a lot more character development. You got to learn a lot more about him and his motivations and his backstory and whatever. So this was good. I loved that opening of our little look into even just one of these Auric and who they are. Then we get the moment that you really, I would like to think you really enjoyed, was Liliana visiting with Beladros Witherbloom, the ancient dragon.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I loved the shoot. Like, she specifically told us as the audience how stupid it was for her to be doing this. Yet she was doing it anyway. And I was like, she didn't even bring anything with her. The only thing she has with her is the little tiny, like, spiky piece of the Searle.
Correct.
Because she thinks that once she convinces this fucking dragon to help her, she might need that for the spell or whatever. You're a fucking idiot. You're not even bringing anything to bribe this fucking dragon. Like, you're basically committing some sort of atrocity here, which you know because you're this pretty ancient fucking necromancer. Like, you can't just show up to a fucking dragon and be like, hey, help me resurrect this guy. And then the dragon's like, no, that's not how this shit works.
Yeah, and then
you're just like, I didn't bring anything to give you any incentive to help me.
Well, not only that, but
except for my stupid tits.
Jesus.
It's like the dragon doesn't give a fuck.
But I will say, Liliana, in an attempt to convince the dragon, like, knowingly or seemingly knowingly shoves a whataboutism at the dragon of like, what about this one dean's child that you brought back, right? And we don't find out anything about that except where the dragon's like, I'm not doing that again.
Right.
Like, very quickly, it's just like, we're not talking about that. Which is like, you knew this was a hot button issue. And so the same as what Amy was just talking about, you're trying to ask this dragon to do something for you. And so what do? You bring up something that you know the dragon's going to be like, now you can go away.
Well,
bye.
Well, because
Get
it's
out.
related. It's directly related.
Sure, but it just brings up, like, if you want somebody to do something...
Look, you've done this before. You know how to do it. You're probably the only person who does. So that's why I've come to you with this.
Sure, but if you...
the problem is, yes.
Yeah, if you want somebody to do something, the last thing you should do is remind them of the reason why they don't ever want to do something like that again.
Whatever. She's such a dumb bitch.
Anyway, so she's doing this to try to...
Just useless.
She's doing this, and she says later, the only reason she is on Arcavios at all is to try to get Gideon back somehow. That there's this collection of all this magical knowledge and all these writings and stuff, and so surely she has a way, she will find a way to bring him back. And one of the things that she mentions, the thing that Beladros knows, is etheric reincorporation. Okay.
They didn't even give, like, any real reasoning for her wanting to do this.
Well, yes, she did. She said, he took my death, so let me give him back his life.
Mm-hmm. That's not a reason. Because guess what? Her motivations are always about her. Well, so all that really means is, I don't want to feel guilty about this anymore.
Sure, absolutely.
Not... Gideon deserves to be alive.
Well, look, it could be a sense of duty. Maybe they hope that we're reading it as it's a sense of duty. Either way, right? It's
we're not
right, but I did.
Because as unfortunate as it may be, that the authors, well, the company wants the audience to not have a fucking brain in their head enough to be able to read these stories and know the difference. We do. So.
Well, and so we'll talk about that in a second too, towards the end. But Liliana mentions at this point that this visit to Beladros, she says, this is her last hope. This is Gideon's last hope. And I was like, where have I heard Liliana and last hope before? And I looked it up just to make sure that I understood. Liliana the Last Hope is absolutely a planeswalker from Eldritch Moon, because Liliana was the last hope of the Gatewatch at that time, which was the 4 people besides her.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I was saying, look. So I just thought that was kind of funny.
It was annoying.
I thought it was interesting in this story because I appreciated the first story did this as well, and it's nice to see this after Kaldheim, which didn't do this as much, but it's nice to see that it still is something that can be done, because we've seen a lot of stories that have switched perspectives a lot, and we've seen some that have done it well and some that have done it poorly. And this one did it pretty well, I thought. I thought both of them did. That they did a good job of switching between Liliana and the twins and Luca and Kasmina and whoever, but you know who it is. You can track it. But I will say, in the second story here, Lessons, I was slightly confused. Only slightly. We had to kind of talk it out between the two of us about what the timelines were of any of these perspectives. So we got Taver's perspective in the beginning. That's present tense. Or that's in the present, right? Because it's after he attacked Liliana. Now he's waiting in the caverns, or whatever you want to call it, underneath the Biblioplex, waiting till nightfall to leave. We find out that information, and that's it. Then we go to Luca, and we're told at the beginning, 3 weeks ago, before Luca even met the Auric or got captured or whatever, he planeswalked to Arcavios. And he gets here, and now we're going to hear Luca's story from when he arrives on the plane to when he gets kidnapped in the last story. And then we go to Liliana. And Liliana is visiting Beladros, Witherbloom. Okay, is that 3 weeks ago? Is that present tense? It's very unclear. I was unsure. And so we looked it up, we took our time to read through, and the thing that helped us was when Liliana saw the group of Auric getting that stag, the white stag or whatever in the woods, which was kind of a throwaway moment, I feel like, otherwise. right? Like, I mean, maybe it will clue us into what they're trying to do at a future time, like that's why. Or it like further cements to Liliana, like, hey, this is a problem. There are a lot of them, right? There's a number of them or whatever.
Okay.
But when we read that, we realized that Liliana just looked at them and was like, oh, okay, there's some Arik over there. They're doing this thing to a stag. And then when we looked back to the first story, we realized that when she saw the Arik in the Biblioplex, what she said was, oh, I think that's an Arik. I've heard about them. So she had only heard about them, which means that her seeing them doing stuff to the stag and identifying them as Arik means that her time in the Biblioplex saying, oh, I've heard about them, she wouldn't have said that. She would have said, I've had encounters with them in the past or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we now know Liliana's story is also in the present. Tavers is in the present. Lucas is the only one in the past.
Yeah.
It was just, there was that moment there where it's like, you know, we see Liliana going to Belladros and it's like, unless she mentions, like, I saw the twin planeswalkers or whatever, like, we had nothing to connect us to what timeline we were working off of with Liliana in that moment. So I appreciated that we were able to then kind of parse that out, because that was
like,
a little...
check the last story.
Yeah. Because it was a little confusing.
I still had something to say about the last time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please, go right ahead.
Yeah, so it was pretty annoying, the Last Hope thing.
Yes.
Because we as the audience got to see Gideon's afterlife, essentially, begin. And, you know, fast forward to this selfish bitch, basically deciding that she needs to bring him back to life artificially, because I guess she didn't learn from the last time she did that and fucking made her brother into a lich who was fucking evil and terrible and a murderer or whatever. You know, she felt guilty about that as well, but, you know, the guilt is more important than the, you know, not fucking up thing. So, yeah, it really fucking stupid. Like, this whole arc is really fucking stupid. Like, it just proves that she's selfish. She doesn't care about the consequences of her actions. She doesn't even care about not defiling the people she loves. She only cares about not feeling guilty about screwing up their lives. And, yeah. We as the audience know that Gideon's great. He's doing fine. He doesn't want to get forced back onto whatever fucking plane she brings him back onto to be a lich or a demon or whatever, like, defiled nonsense she's gonna create with her stupid, selfish spells.
Just to make herself kind of feel better about what...
Yeah, so she can say, oh, I brought you back to life. See, I cared. No, you didn't.
I will say, kind of going off of that, but also continuing along, there's the moment towards the end, right, where we see the art for this, the like thumbnail art for this story of Confront the Past, of Liliana, or Professor Onyx looking into the mirror, and it's Liliana and Gideon behind her or whatever. Liliana did the exact same thing that Jace and Nissa did in Zendikar Rising. And she asked herself, what would Gideon do? She didn't use those exact words, but you better believe she did that exact thing. Jace did it, Nissa did it, now Liliana's doing it.
And every time, I want to vomit.
I know how much you dislike it, so I'm bringing it up, but not to like upset you, but to like point out, like, they're still doing it. So, and she's doing it in relation to her destiny, right? Or destiny in general, in that she is here while this Auric business is going on. And this is where she says, the only reason that she's here is because of Gideon, like trying to find a way to bring Gideon back. So she shouldn't care about the Arik, especially with her selfishness, right? And yet, she sees these Arik and she's like, all right, well, Gideon, I don't believe in destiny, but Gideon believed in destiny. And so, maybe I should take a page out of Gideon's book before it's too late.
And I was just like, of course it's too late, you stupid bitch. You killed him. Because, she's, I hate her so much.
And so, she is now going to try to... I thought this was a little odd. Again, we're talking about Liliana the Last Hope, right? As Amy pointed out to me, I think not while we were filming.
I said if she's my last hope, I'd rather die.
But you also mentioned that her being the last hope for the Gatewatch, the only reason she was helping them at all is because she knew, hey, look, I'm going to save their lives, and then I'm going to stay with them, become a member of the Gatewatch, and then use them to kill my demons so that I benefit. Me.
Because she can't deal with feeling guilty about stuff.
And so
the only reason why she had those fucking pacts was because she did shit wrong, pissed those people off, and they, fucked with her.
And so, in this case, though, what's she doing? She looked at the twins, or saw the twins, and thought to herself, you know what? I can use them to help me. Now, I think what they're trying to say is that it's a more noble thing, because instead of doing it to get her out of her own debts, she's now doing it to help the plane or the school.
I wouldn't know.
Who's having trouble with the Arik?
It's just pretty clear that it means that she hasn't changed and she's just as much of an abusive person as she was before.
So that's...
Even though it seems very much like they're saying it in a way where it's like they want us to think that's not true, but I can't fathom how.
So that's kind of how the second story closes, is with Liliana saying, I'm going to go talk to at least Rowan. If not both, at least Rowan, because that's who she saw out the window. I do want to say, before we close out and before people, close off of this video, hey, we had a bonus JaAR go up today. Yeah. So it was before this one, so if you missed it, go check it out. And if you missed it, you should make sure that you're subscribed. Subscribe, ring the bell. You'll get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, so that if it's a bonus video like today's was, right, you won't miss it. And you shouldn't miss it. It's a good one. We would love to hear your thoughts on that JaAR as well as this one, because it's super important we want any and all opinions that you might have. If you think that this is a good redemption arc for Liliana, we want to hear it.
Yeah, maybe you think I'm being completely unreasonable. I want to know all about it.
Definitely. Because
well, I'm not. But, just in case. Just in case you have some proof that I am.
We will be open to any and all opinions that you might have, proof or otherwise. Jesus. But sincerely, thank you all for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed. Let us know your thoughts on the format of this as well, because we're not going to come back to these main stories for 2 weeks now in terms of our videos. But next week we'll be back with the first 2 side stories, because they come out on Fridays and we make these videos on Thursdays. So, and honestly, this video was long enough with 2 stories. We could have done 3 today, because there's 1 side story that's already been released.
No.
That is silly. Because we want to give these the time that they deserve, right? They are their own self-contained things, and so they deserve to be discussed. So, we'll be back next week with side stories 1 and 2. We hope that you'll join us for them. I have heard, no spoilers necessarily, but I've heard good things about at least the first one, because again, the second one's not out yet at the time that we're filming this. But I've heard good things about the first one. Side stories are always cool, to just meet characters that get to be written by these authors with what seems to be a lot less hand-holding in terms of what they need, like the beats that they need to hit for those characters.
We'll see.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that as well. And we'll talk about both stories next week.
What would Gilliam do?
That's the main story. I'm talking about the side stories.
We'll see.
So, please feel free, as always, any thoughts that you have on our opinions on the story itself. What do you think about Strixhaven so far? If you've read the side stories, you can give some of your opinions, but no spoilers for people who are following along with us and haven't read them yet. But you can say if you liked it or not, or if you're looking forward to our review or not. That we would love to hear, because
or talk to us about which,
school you're in.
School you're in, or
what school are you in? You didn't mention it in this video.
Yeah, I mean, we took that little quiz thing that said Witherbloom, but it's between that and Lore Hall. So Lore Hall.
Lorehold. You're thinking of Andy Warhol, I think.
Yeah. Anyway.
Either way, that's Prismari for art. Anyway, Andy Warhol would have been a Prismari. That's what you've heard it here first, folks, because no one else cares. Anyway, so telling us what famous people would have been in what colleges down in the comments below is a great way.
Spam us in the comments with that.
Is a great way to join us and your fellow viewers in showing off your
hashtag Vorthos Pride.
However you can, however you have to, I don't care. Join us. This is great. I'm enjoying these stories so far. Looking forward to next week and the week after and the week after and the week, whatever.
Yeah.
And we hope you are as well. Please don't forget to join us on our streams Mondays and Fridays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Mondays, we play MTG Arena. This past Monday, we actually played Magic Legends, but that was a one-time thing. If people enjoy it, they can tell us, and we can do more things like it in the future. The VOD is up on the channel. And Fridays, this Friday... Yes. And this Friday, we are back with more Dragon Ball Z Budokai, the franchise. This time, we are into continuing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi. If you're watching this far along and you're still listening to us without closing off, I will say that I did a dumb thing. So please feel free to watch that stream to find out what that dumb thing was.
Oh no.
It took a lot of time. You know what it was.
Yes, I know.
It took a lot of time.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Because I just remembered what it was.
Yeah, it was a lot. But definitely stay tuned for that stream on Friday. Again, subscribing and ringing the bell, you'll find out when every video comes out, when any stream of ours goes live. You can check out our other channels down in the description box below as well. Thank you all so very much for watching this episode of JaAR. We really hope that you enjoyed. But for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.